Across the dusty corridors of ancient history, there is a name whispered through three great religions, a woman whose legend stretches from Africa to the Middle East, a queen, a ruler, a mystery. Her name was Queen of Sheba. For thousands of years, scholars, priests, and historians have debated a single question. Who was she? Was she an African queen from the powerful kingdom of Aksum? Was she a ruler from ancient Arabia in what is now Yemen? Or was she something even greater? The founder of a dynasty that would rule Ethiopia for nearly 3,000 years. Her story appears in the Hebrew Bible, the Quran, and ancient Ethiopian texts like the Kebra Nagast. And in every version of the story, one moment stands above all others. A powerful queen travels across deserts and oceans to test the wisdom of a legendary king. That king was Solomon. But the deeper question is not why she came. The real mystery is why the world has tried so hard to forget where she came from. Tonight we journey back more than 3,000 years into the ancient world to uncover the truth about the Queen of Sheba. To understand the Queen of Sheba, we must first understand the world she ruled. Around the 10th century BCE, the region surrounding the Red Sea was one of the richest trade networks on earth. Long before European empires, long before modern nations, African and Arabian kingdoms were already masters of global commerce. Caravans crossed scorching deserts, carrying treasures that ancient civilizations desperately desired. Gold, ivory, frankincense, myrrh, spices more valuable than silver. These goods moved between Africa, Arabia, India, and the Mediterranean world. At the center of this trade stood the mysterious kingdom known as Sheba. Historians believe Sheba controlled one of the most powerful trade empires of the ancient world. Its merchants sailed across the Red Sea. Its caravans traveled through the deserts of Arabia. And its wealth flowed into the great civilizations of Egypt, Israel, and Mesopotamia. But Sheba had something else unusual for its time. It was ruled by a woman. The woman history remembers as the Queen of Sheba is known by different names depending on the tradition. In Ethiopian history, she's called Makeba. In Islamic tradition, she's called Bilqis. But regardless of the name, the legend describes the same figure. A queen of extraordinary intelligence, a master of diplomacy, and a ruler whose wealth rivaled the greatest kings of the ancient world. According to historical traditions, her kingdom controlled vast resources, gold mines deep within Africa, spice routes stretching across Arabia, and shipping lanes connecting Africa to Asia. Ancient merchants spoke of cities overflowing with incense and precious metals, temples filled with offerings from distant lands, and caravans so large they could stretch across the horizon. But one rumor captured the queen's attention more than any other. A rumor about a king in a distant land. A king whose wisdom was said to surpass every ruler on earth. That king was Solomon. During this same period, the kingdom of Israel was ruled by one of the most famous figures in biblical history, King Solomon. Solomon was the son of David, the legendary king who unified the tribes of Israel. But Solomon's fame came not from war, but from wisdom. Stories about his intelligence spread across the ancient world. He was said to settle impossible disputes, solve riddles no one else could answer, and speak with knowledge that seemed almost supernatural. Under Solomon's rule, the city of Jerusalem became a center of wealth and learning. Magnificent palaces were built. The great Solomon's temple rose above the city, and merchants from distant lands filled the markets with exotic goods. But rumors of Solomon's wisdom eventually reached the court of the Queen of Sheba, and she made a decision that would become one of the most famous journeys in ancient history. She would travel to Jerusalem, but she would not come alone. According to ancient texts, the Queen of Sheba prepared a caravan unlike anything the world had ever seen. Hundreds of camels loaded with gold, precious stones glittering in the desert sun, rare spices so valuable they were worth their weight in treasure. The journey from Sheba to Jerusalem was not easy. It required crossing vast deserts and dangerous trade routes. Bandits roamed the wilderness. Sandstorms could bury entire caravans, and the journey could take months. But the queen pressed forward, for she had one goal: to test the wisdom of Solomon. And when she finally arrived in Jerusalem, the meeting between the two rulers would become one of the most legendary encounters in ancient history. When the Queen of Sheba entered the court of Solomon, the king immediately understood that this was no ordinary visitor. She was powerful, intelligent, and determined. According to the first book of Kings, she came with difficult questions and riddles designed to test Solomon's wisdom. Ancient traditions claim these riddles covered everything from philosophy to politics to the mysteries of nature. Some stories even say she asked questions that no other king had ever been able to answer. But Solomon answered them all, every single one. The queen was astonished. She had traveled thousands of miles to test the greatest mind of the ancient world, and she had found that the stories were true. Solomon's wisdom was beyond anything she had imagined. After witnessing Solomon's wisdom, the Queen of Sheba presented him with gifts. The Bible describes the treasure she brought in extraordinary detail: 120 talents of gold, massive quantities of spices, and precious stones of incredible value. The amount of spice she brought was said to be greater than any gift ever given to a king. These gifts symbolized more than admiration. They represented the alliance of two powerful civilizations, Africa and Israel. Trade between the regions increased, caravans multiplied, and the wealth of both kingdoms continued to grow. But according to Ethiopian tradition, something even more important happened during her visit. Something that would shape the future of Africa. The meeting between the Queen of Sheba and Solomon is one of the most mysterious encounters in ancient history. In the Hebrew Bible, the story is short and respectful. The queen arrives, tests Solomon's wisdom, praises him, exchanges gifts, and then returns to her homeland. But outside the Bible, other traditions tell a far more dramatic story. According to ancient Ethiopian chronicles preserved in the Kebra Nagast, the relationship between the queen and Solomon went far beyond diplomacy. The Ethiopian text describes a meeting of two powerful minds, two rulers who were fascinated by each other. The queen had come to test Solomon, but in the process, she encountered a king whose intelligence, charisma, and spiritual authority left a deep impression on her. For months, the queen remained in Jerusalem, observing the kingdom and learning from Solomon's court. But one night, according to legend, a moment occurred that would change the future of an entire civilization. The Kebra Nagast describes a strange agreement between Solomon and the queen. Before she arrived, the queen had made it clear that she would not become Solomon's wife or concubine. She was a sovereign ruler, not a captive queen. Solomon respected her wishes, but he also made a clever proposal. He told her if she took nothing from his palace without permission, he would not touch her. The queen agreed, but Solomon had already prepared a test. That night, the palace servants prepared a feast filled with extremely spicy food. The meal was delicious, but incredibly salty and hot. After the feast, the queen retired to her chambers, thirsty beyond measure. In the middle of the night, she woke up desperate for water. Next to her bed stood a jug of water. Unable to resist, she drank from it. But the moment she touched the water, Solomon appeared. He reminded her of their agreement. She had taken something from his house, and according to the oath, he was now free from his promise. The story says that night marked the beginning of a relationship that would echo across centuries of history. When the Queen of Sheba eventually left Jerusalem, she returned to her homeland carrying more than treasure and knowledge. According to Ethiopian tradition, she was pregnant. Months later, she gave birth to a son. His name was Menelik I. This child would grow into one of the most important figures in Ethiopian history. Menelik I would later become the first emperor of the Ethiopian Solomonic dynasty. For Ethiopians, this lineage was not just legend. For nearly 3,000 years, Ethiopian emperors claimed direct descent from Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. This included the famous modern emperor Haile Selassie. In Ethiopian tradition, the royal family was known as the Solomonic dynasty, a dynasty believed to be founded by the son of Solomon and Makeba. But the story of Menelik does not end there, because according to Ethiopian legend, he eventually returned to Jerusalem. And what happened next would create one of the greatest religious mysteries in the world. In the Bible, one sacred object stood above all others: the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark was believed to contain the stone tablets of the 10 Commandments given to Moses. It represented the physical presence of God among the Israelites. For centuries, it remained in the temple built by Solomon. But at some point in history, the Ark vanished. No one knows exactly when. No one knows exactly how. But Ethiopian tradition tells a remarkable story. When Menelik I grew older, he traveled to Jerusalem to meet his father Solomon. Solomon was overjoyed to meet his son. He offered Menelik the throne of Israel, but Menelik refused. He chose instead to return to Ethiopia. However, according to the Kebra Nagast, something extraordinary happened before he left. Members of Solomon's court secretly removed the Ark of the Covenant from the temple. They replaced it with a replica, and the real Ark was taken to Ethiopia. To this day, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims the Ark still exists. It is said to be kept in the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion, guarded by a single monk who is never allowed to leave the church. Whether the story is true or not, it remains one of the greatest religious mysteries in history. For centuries, historians have debated one major question: where exactly was the Kingdom of Sheba? Some scholars argue that Sheba was located in modern Yemen, where the ancient Sabaean kingdom once thrived. Archaeologists have discovered impressive ruins there, including temples and inscriptions that confirm the existence of a powerful kingdom. However, other historians believe Sheba was located in Ethiopia and Eritrea. This theory points to the ancient African kingdom of Damt, which existed around the same time period. Artifacts from this civilization reveal strong connections between Africa and Arabia. Trade routes crossed the Red Sea constantly. Many historians now believe the truth may be even more complex. Sheba may not have been a single city or kingdom. Instead, it may have been a powerful trading empire spanning both sides of the Red Sea, an African-Arabian civilization controlling global trade. If this is true, then the Queen of Sheba may have ruled one of the earliest international empires in human history. The story of the Queen of Sheba is more than just a legend. It represents something deeper, a reminder that ancient Africa was not isolated or primitive. It was wealthy, connected, powerful. Long before European exploration, African civilizations were already part of global trade networks. Gold from Africa reached the Mediterranean. Spices moved through Arabian ports. And powerful African rulers negotiated with kings across the ancient world. The Queen of Sheba symbolizes this forgotten era of African influence. A time when an African queen could travel across continents, challenge a legendary king, and become part of one of the most enduring stories in world history. Even today, the legacy of the Queen of Sheba continues to inspire historians, religious scholars, and storytellers. Her story appears in the Hebrew Bible, the Quran, and the Ethiopian Kebra Nagast. She's remembered as a queen of wisdom, a ruler of immense wealth, and a woman who stood face to face with one of the most famous kings in history. But perhaps the greatest mystery is this: how much of her story has been lost, and how much still remains hidden in the sands of Africa and Arabia, somewhere in the ruins of ancient kingdoms, in the temples buried beneath deserts, and in the traditions passed down through generations. The true story of the Queen of Sheba may still be waiting to be discovered.